Whenever you're having to change something with a client, it takes a lot of time and energy from us and our team, and we have to put advice documents together, get clients to sign information. They're not always around, so decisions and investments aren't changed very quickly. When we're managing direct share portfolios, they can be very timely with the corporate actions that come into it as well. And again, advice documents are always needed. So mainly there's a lot of efficiencies, and I don't see myself as an expert on the investments. That's what Morningstar's analysts are there to do. Ours is looking after the client strategy and their lifestyle, and I'd rather have the experts making the decisions and being able to move quickly in and out of markets.
It's quite interesting. I come into this practice about 4 years ago. It's a long-running, it was Account Plus practice, and my predecessor, and I'm not throwing anyone under a bus or anything, I don't mean it like that. My predecessor had a very normal financial planning focus on get the product right, get the investment strategy within that right, and the reviews often focus. And I noticed that my junior planners that were in the team when I came here used to talk a lot about, this is why we've made that change. This is who they invest in. You can see in the Morningstar report what shares they hold. They're big, they're small, they're this, they're that. And it was really interesting because when I sort of first come over and I started to talk and get to know these clients, they noticed that when I reviewed them, I didn't talk about that stuff at all. And it sort of came up, and we started quizzing our clients then about what they valued. And it was really interesting. They did not value that investment stuff hardly at all. For every client that did, there was probably 25 that didn't. And they go, well, we're not interested in that. Was the common theme. I was like, okay, it's really interesting. And what I was concentrating on doing was broadening the advice scopes and talking more about what they had going on in life. And I know that's a bit cliche, but what I had worries about the way that the portfolios are managed with the model portfolios is if there was a change that was made 1 month after I reviewed the client, it wasn't an urgent sell or anything like that, but it was just a general change. Well, they mightn't happen for another 11 months until I saw that client again. And I thought that was probably wrong. And we weren't doing the best we could by then. But as a business, it wasn't possible for me to go and implement that all by myself. I'd come from an MDA world, and I found that the risk of that, I suppose, that's where ASIC sort of has a pretty good spotlight on things, in that, if there's ever been problems, a lot of them come up in that world where things aren't done right, or, a small administration error, do it on the wrong account even, can mean your license. So I didn't want that sort of risk. But I wanted the timeliness of the portfolio changes. So realistically, I suppose I concentrated the business on what I thought was valued more.
When you're building portfolios, there's more time spent discussing investments and performance, which we can't necessarily can't control. Now clients get lots more portfolio updates. So we use the trade updates as they're done, and clients, they're written as if they're coming from me. So clients will often interact with me on those trade updates and make comments of what they're happy with. Most of the time they're happy. Occasionally there'll be a trade they question. The discussions are more focused on the client, whether they're on track with their goals. And we provide, we put a lot of work into their meeting their objectives and building projections, which is what the clients value, is are we on track? So we talk to that a lot more rather than talking necessarily about the investments and the switches that we need to do and why we're making them, because they happen along the way. The clients get information regularly from us every time there's a trade update, so they're aware of what's going on in their portfolios before they come and see us.
It's interesting. When I think back on the clients that I've had the longest, 15 years plus, and we don't even talk about investing. We talk about what's happening with the family and what's happening with their business and what's happening on a day-to-day basis and where they're heading and their mental health and all of that. Like, you become a bit of an agony aunt when you start getting into the D&M stuff. But it's what it's enabled me to do is deepen a relationship tenfold. Removing that sticking point. Nothing worse than a review when you start to come in and talk to a client. It's like, oh, how'd the thing go? What did it cost me? I hate that. it's uncomfortable for me. It's probably uncomfortable for them, and it's not at all what it's about. You know, financial planning is getting to your goal, make your money line up with the life you want to lead. It's kind of simple, but when it's that commodity-based stuff, that relationship's at risk every single time you open your mouth. I think that time and talking about the personal circumstances is really good. It enables me to understand more of what they've got going on when I can talk about that stuff, less so about the market and the performance. And you'll understand where this time to talk about these things comes from once you realise you're not sitting there making all the changes to portfolios all the time, and you're not making all of the conversations around that with the client all the time. That's where I pick up all the time to then talk to the client about what the hell they've got going on in life. And once I understand what they've got, I can really, I think, focus on what they value more, and it's coincided with probably an increase in value I can provide back.
Our advice, as you said, has always been goals focused. So aligning that to an outcomes approach to investing just makes sense. It allows us to focus on things we can control, like structure and strategy, and getting a much better understanding of the client's circumstances. We're spending less time on the other stuff. An outcomes-based approach also means that portfolio performance is, what we found is, admittedly we've only been there for a couple of years, but smoother over time. And a big thing when we're talking to clients is, and one of their goals is, yes, we want to grow our funds and we want to be able to meet our objectives, but we don't want to take a whole heap of risk doing it. So clients really appreciate, particularly in the Morningstar portfolios, the reduced volatility and the less risk that Morningstar do take, which helps to increase the likelihood of them meeting their goals. So we've seen over the last few months with COVID, it's really been put to the test, I guess, as to what those returns have looked like. And we and our clients have been really quite impressed with the returns that the portfolios have achieved. And clients that have been managing their own money and wound up self-managed super funds to come in to the portfolio continually telling me that how happy they are that they've made the move.
Because we've broadened scope so much outside of the usual roll your super, get your life insurance attached to it, and really started to dig into what do you got going on and what's your strategy here and what's it all mean in the end? What's the legacy issue here? It's really, that part's been valued enormously, as you can imagine, because the client feels connected with. But the actual SMA experience, just straight out, if I put a little cone around that, they've never been better informed. Like Morningstar do a fantastic job, and I'll pump your tyres up here, Burnsy. Morningstar do a great job of giving us information that I can pass on to a client that gives them a regular update. You know, model portfolios don't have it. If I built the portfolio, I sure as hell not going to have time to sit there and do 20 hours of editing to go, hey, there's your monthly update. But they get that quarterly update that's more significant. So they get a monthly update. Hey guys, this is what it is. It's a couple of button clicks for us as a business. It takes one of my people, half hour, and I've got $50 million worth of clients ecstatic because they've got an update that says this is what's going on. But then there's a major quarterly one that says a little bit more in depth. And then, of course, trade updates that happen from an ad hoc basis that come in to say, hey, this is what's going on in the world. This is what's done about it. Clients do know that things are happening in the background. And there's nothing worse than the old review experience where clients used to hate a hold recommendation when they were that, or how much it costs, what I earn, and a hold recommendation was like, oh shit, what am I paying you for? I've come from that world and I hated it. I left the last firm I was at before I bought the one I'm in now, strictly because we had a philosophical difference of opinion about how and what clients value. And that was part of it. As a business, we've repriced things pretty dramatically. We've knocked our client base down by, look, if you said you went from 150 review paying clients to 120, close round figures, then we probably improved our bottom line by about 200 grand in the middle of all that. And in that same breath, I've also said, and I'm focusing elsewhere than just the investment, like where the rubber really hits the road. So that's if that's not a powerful enough story to say what you can do within this whole process, nothing is, because I can tell you my stress levels have gone from up here to here in the middle of all that. And not because of the 200 grand, but because of work.
Any advice in this video is general advice prepared by Morningstar without reference to your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider the advice in light of these matters and any relevant product disclosure statement before making any decision to invest.